I am. I'm from Fresno, born and raised. So that's kind of, it's a little easier to get attached to things in your own hometown. I think I was in 5th grade, and I just started really loving architecture around that time.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't remember, it was a few years ago I saw the Hotel Fresno for the first time, and then I really just became in love with it. Old hotels in general I love because of how grand they used to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially looking back at old photos of, when they had the big revolving door here and, to see the bellhops out front, that really, I love stuff like that. Especially with hotels, they have a lot more things that you can find to collect, like the things I have for my collection, like the plates and their emblems, and it's a lot easier to find things like that on a building that is a hotel than it is, any other historic building.
Right.
I feel. I started collecting, I think, like a little over 3 years ago, and it was a little before that I had first saw the building, and I just started, Googling things online and just Google image search, and a couple things that popped up, and I thought, I wonder if there's anything on eBay.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I found it was just postcards at the time. That's kind of the easier things to collect.
Yeah.
And then finding the dishes and, silverware and things like that, that's where I really started to get excited when I was like, okay, I can date this piece. To me, it just, like, finding little pieces of history, especially our own history, and I think, to me, that's something that's really special, is you wouldn't think, beautiful pieces like that would come from, a building like this, just looking at it now.
Yeah.
Now it's on a street that doesn't exist anymore, and there's a parking lot in front of it, and a taco truck out in front of it during the weekday, and people just, walk right by, and
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything to them now, but it was so grand at one time. To me, that's really neat to look back on and try to remind people of the beauty that, we did have in Fresno and we can have again. It's not a massive collection. I'm very proud to have it at the Fresno Fairgrounds in their new museum.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's at least gotten that big to be able to display it. Maybe 20 to 30.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's including, things as small as like little matchbooks to
Yeah.
the big platters that I have that have their emblem from the hotel. Probably the ladle. The ladle was really exciting because when you think of, an old fancy hotel or things like that, you think of like the dinner pieces, and that was really cool to find that, and then to find one. That was the first piece I found that was from the year the hotel opened. All the other pieces were more from like the 20s and the 40s, and that was my first 1913 piece. It began construction in 1912 and finished in 1913. Edward Folks was the architect. He built the Oakland Tribune Tower, and he actually won a competition to build, or to be the architect for the hotel. And it was built. It was the most luxurious hotel in its time.
Yeah.
When the Hotel Californian came along, that kind of upstaged it, but it was still the classiest hotel in Fresno, and a lot of the vaudeville performers at the time would go and perform at the White Theater, which was down here on this block at one time. And so they would perform there and stay at the Hotel Fresno. Once the 60s came, I think it was around that time, everything was becoming more modern. They started to put in the Fulton Mall and really tear down a lot of the downtown historic buildings. That was when the Hotel Fresno really started to go downhill, and they started allowing people you could pay month to month to live there. And in the 80s is when it became senior housing. And well, actually, I think it was the 70s it became senior housing, and then by the 80s, they said they were going to close for some renovations, and then it just never reopened. Yes. Someone actually had torn down one of the what do you call it? The
So, like the boards that cover
one
the
of the
window?
boards in the back, and somebody had posted online. I drove past the Hotel Fresno, and there's a board down, and it was first thing in the morning on a Saturday, and it was like 8 o'clock. I was like, I'm going. I'm gonna call the police after to let them know so they can board it back up.
Right.
But I'm going in there. I'm collecting all this stuff. I would at least want to see the inside for myself.